I just want to go over here a couple of trades on the 16th of April. So let's get to the trade.
Researchandmarkets.com. Duke Realty started at outperform with $48 stock price target at Raymond James.
So I just want to show you the context of the day before we cover a couple of trades here.
Simon Property upgraded to buy at Jefferies on favorable macro setup. Two simple stocks snapped up by ARK Invest on first day. Prologis started at strong buy with $125 stock price target at Raymond James. Marathon Petroleum double upgraded to strong buy from market perform at Raymond James. Generational Capital Markets advises Great Lakes Renewable Energy in its sale to Lignetics.
So I'm just spotting out areas where I'm looking for Russell to kind of exhaust. I have here extensions of certain movements according to market profiles nuances that I have. I just highlight certain areas as well, the single print and all that, and having this boost here on the 16th, the market had basically in the Globex. Again, I'm saying Globex, but this is like 8:21 in the morning there. So a huge move up in the markets, and we're gonna get to a couple of trades that I had here in this day.
Cast Report 2021 to 2025. Researchandmarkets.com.
Buy,
Sell.
buy,
Sell.
recentered,
Sell. Sell.
buy,
Sell.
buy,
Sell.
buy, buy,
Sell.
buy,
So
buy,
NQ had just moved off its lows, and ES had just made a new low. Fairly bearish start to on the tape as well. I had taken a gold trade at the pre-market, and I forgot to record that, so I couldn't really cover that trade here. But on ES, I'm very bearish at this open here. It's just 5 minutes into the market, but it just made a new low. NQ just popped off its lows here, and it just wasn't the best entry, honestly. But
Sell. Sell.
I think I
buy,
managed it
buy,
pretty well here.
Sell.
buy,
Sell.
buy, buy,
Sell. Sell.
So I
buy,
did
Sell.
want
Sell.
to
Sell.
take the
Sell.
trade off
Sell.
right
buy,
here,
buy,
but
buy,
Sell.
as
Sell.
soon
buy,
as
buy, buy,
we're going to see NQ start moving
Sell.
lower as well,
Sell.
which kind of gives
Sell.
me the conviction that it's most likely going to do what I want it to do. So I'm just going to see if I could maybe lower the volume here on my price squawk here just a bit. The movement to the upside is just not convincing, but I'm so bearish biased that I let this trade. I was really patient with this trade here. NQ had started squeezing higher, but it kind of started doing this movement here now, which is just confirming to me that it really doesn't want to go up. So it's a little jumpy. That's why later on the day, since again this is OPEX too, so later on in the day what I did is I went and I just traded the micro NQs all day pretty much, and was able to scalp that a lot easier because the market was very jumpy. So when the market is very jumpy like this, maybe always try to go into the micros, and instead of trading one or two contracts, go in with two or three on the micros, and then you know on NQ you could add a bit lower, and it's not really um, like adding to losers in that case. It's just the context of the tape when it's jumpy like that. It's highly rotational, and you're able to get decent scalps on the micros. But if you try it on the big minis like the NQ or the ES, it could get a bit complicated. So since the market was very jumpy, and every time it just made a nice move, it just wouldn't do a continuation. That kind of tape is really OPEX kind of days. So I don't like to be very aggressive that day. So I kind of like let this trade go on, but it didn't really do what I wanted it to do. So I do end up kind of like, it's not really a gain. I'd call this a scratch here. So it's moving down. It's doing the velocity that I want because it's basically creeping lower, but not doing anything. I try to add another one here. So I think I'm short approximately 3 on this one here. And I'm just, the reason why, again, I was I got this question from a couple of traders. Why do you have all these buy limits? It's not that I have 10 lots. I'm not 10 lots short on this trade or whatever. It's just that I just want to have a good position on the queue. So what I do is if it starts moving lower, I always have one or two to take profits right away. And then if I can get maybe another scale in and I'll add into it and try to get the push lower. And on Jigsaw, what I could do is I could just tag the price and just move it lower. Tag the price, move it lower. So I'm able to play around with it, and then I end up canceling some anyway. So it's not too complicated. So contextually here, ES is making new lows. We're very close to the lows, and you know NQ did move off its low. So that is the kind of condition where I should look to scratch this trade. Uh, I'm sorry, the euro had started making a bit of a rotation higher too. So not the best entries contextually for me on this one, but this is where I wanted to take the trade off, and then it just started moving lower and kind of convinced me that I did want to move. This is where I could have taken at least one or two contracts off, and I think that's exactly what I'm going to do here. Yeah, so I'm moving. You see, I'm moving my stops so that I can at least get one or two off, and if it does not move lower and if I can get some kind of continuation lower, I could add to it. And here you see I'm putting my stops right away so that now I get the move I want, but just doesn't trigger me, and I'm gonna end up scratching this trade here. Look how I'm ready to hit the buy button there, and I just put a stop right away at break even. Well, I guess it wasn't really break even there, but well, close to break even basically. So I'm getting ready to get out of the trade, and look how just doesn't, you know, give me that continuation. I'm closely looking at NQ, and look at NQ doing lows, and this movement in NQ is just convincing me that overall indices want to move lower, but I got impatient here and I just didn't want to keep going with this one because I kind of felt like NQ was just doing a little backfill since it just came off its lows, and here I'm just going to close this trade here, scratched it. So I mean, I think it was like a $75 win or a gain or something. Not a huge gain, but the contextually, I think I was a bit hesitant. The fact that NQ had just moved off its lows and just rotating above it, and looked like it would do another push lower, but it didn't. So contextually, I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't stuck in, like I would get squeezed and then it would actually move lower after I got squeezed out. So you always want to make sure you're in a good location where you don't get squeezed like that. Alright, so we're gonna get to another one here. Again, I'm short biased, very close to the lows on ES. Let's see how I manage this one here.
Recentered.
Again, I'll always have an eye on NQ here, which is um, why didn't I trade the NQ and went with ES? I just felt like ES had
Recentered.
a better movement this day, as NQ was very
Recentered.
jumpy and was just look how it's super jumpy. It goes down and then jumps back up. Squeeze. I mean, you might say, well, NQ is always like that every day. Well, it's not. It's just that this day it felt really jumpy to me, and I just felt that I would most likely be better off with ES. But to be honest, even ES didn't give me the best movements. Um, a part of a couple of trades that I had there, um, NQ just basically was too jumpy and I didn't like it, and ES didn't really do the moves I wanted. But here's the trade. Let's just let it run a bit.
Recentered.
It's here at its lows, very three ticks above the lows here, and it's very close. And I want that flush, and it just doesn't go, and I scratch it right away. Because the reason why I just scratch it right away is I just feel like it's not going to do the flush that I want, so it might actually go back up maybe 6 to 8 ticks and then come back to retest the lows. So I was really hesitant and I wanted to get out right away. Also, the fact that in the previous trade that I just explained, NQ had just moved off its lows and was still rotating around 10, 15 points off its lows and just in that range and doing nothing. So nothing really bearish contextually when we look at the correlations, and Russell had already started making its rotations just off the lows as well. So it wasn't really the best contextual trading trading location for me, especially on ES, but it just felt like ES was gonna flush down and it didn't, so I scratched that pretty quick. We're gonna get to another one here, so I'm just gonna fast forward just a bit. So look at this entry here. I've got this '06 that I've noticed that it's a liquidity bucket coming off my footprint charts that I watch on my left. Look at the entry here. You see how it does not want to trade at that level. Comes back and it doesn't. So this velocity move here, this movement here, just pay attention to it. This is my way of the dome telling me it wants to go higher. So entry was pretty good. Got flushed down. If this was on the NQ on the regular contract, you would kind of like, oh my god, bad entry. But for micros, it's not bad, right? It's only one contract. I could kind of like, I could still position this pretty well. So I started playing the micros here. Uh, let's just follow how this went. And I'm already ready to add to it again a certain number of points lower, and look how it flushes very quickly into my area, my price. That is the movement you want to see. That quick rush, flush into your price. That's beautiful. Now it didn't do the exact movement I wanted right away, but it did it right after. As you can see, it just did that flush higher, and let's just go back and see it again here. This is a typical kind of trade that I always want to focus on. And look here, um, sorry, I couldn't rewind there. I'm just gonna see if I can rewind that a bit better. So yes, I was ready to add at this price, so let's just hit that here. The 13,998 again, based off liquidity buckets. It's a footprint chart that I have. Got tagged. This is where I should have like moved these sell targets right away. I should have kind of noticed that the market does want to go higher. The the movement here is indicative that the market does want to go higher, so I should have moved these up right away. I got basically stopped out very quick, but uh, the thing is that rush into that area was actually just a squeeze, and it just continued going lower after. So I guess I mean, trade wise, it was good, but um, I think I did a good job in putting those sell orders approximately. I mean, I did a pretty good job of gauging the volatility. That's what I call this because the ranges are getting a bit extended. You know, especially with the linear regressions that I use. And then we've got VWAP here at 998, so we are below the 998 area. Again, this is a separate Sierra charts that I have just behind my domes. Instead of having them on a separate um, separate screens, I just have it behind the dome here. So it's my way of not having to look around when I want to just see the contextual analysis of the market. Here, this 64 all day long. I think I had my order ready to bid there, and it flushed into it. I mean, on ES, it flushed into it at the beginning, at the open. I mean, 30 minutes after open, in the first 30 minutes basically. But then it just never came back into it, and it's just too bad because I think it came back around to the 66s and it never touched the 64. So, especially on the 16th, the market really did a nice move up. So I could have had a good trade on ES. It's just that my my order here just never got tagged basically. So if you do want to see other micros trades that I do, I have some trades that I did with on the micros that I have on YouTube, and I'll just tag them here, and you guys could go back and watch them as well. Um, the micros have a different way of trading. You need to, I mean, if you have a small account, that's one thing, but if you if you're trading with the micros, you kind of have to I'm very comfortable scaling into the micros, 10 micros maybe, on NQ. Just at several prices. Just let the market do its thing. Let the market come to you. No, don't be too aggressive. And then again, I'm still monitoring if I'm really on the right side of the tape or not. And if I'm on the wrong side of the tape, that's where I'll most likely hedge with the big contract, the E-mini contract. So I do that in some occasions, and it I mean the way you have to look at it is if you're long 2 or 3 micros MNQ, like basically, and you know that the tape is really against you, you're just not. You don't aggressively enter. Let the market pull back and come into you. That's how you have to play the micros because NQ won't flush down 40 points suddenly. Well, it could happen again, but on the micros, the stress will be less. So when it does flush down 5, 10 points, you need to be ready to add on your micros. So you don't have to be very aggressive with the micros. You just let it. You gradually scale into maybe 8 to 10 micros. That's how I trade it, and then if I'm really on the wrong side of the tape, I'll hedge it with the big NQ, the E mini contract. That's one way of trading it. I mean, um, some traders want to make sure that their entry is exactly perfect on the micros, and sometimes you'll get 1 or 2 runners where you could make 40, $50, and maybe very luckily maybe $100 on the micros. But if you don't scale into it, it's going to be really tough to make three, $200 or $300 on the micros, which is very easy to do on the regular e-minis. So I mean, it takes some practice, but at the end of the day, I think with the micros, you need to kind of relax a bit and just monitor your entries and not be too aggressive. If you want to make 200, $300 on it, you need to be a bit more relaxed and let the market come to you. So if you guys do
sell,
appreciate the 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 videos here. I really appreciate if you guys could hit the like button and subscribe, and also give me feedback on your comments, and don't hesitate to email me or contact me on Twitter. And like I said, I will add some videos here that you guys can go back and watch, and do make sure to always give me feedback on what I could do, what I could improve with my videos here. Long on the micros again.
sell, sell,
I don't know if I can just rewind it a bit
sell,
here. I've
sell,
got, let's just rewind it a
sell,
bit. Hopefully this works.
sell, 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 sell,
Okay, so yeah, that was my entry.
sell, 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 sell,
I think
sell,
I've got this wrong here. I'm just gonna add to it here. Give me 2 seconds.
sell,
Yeah, so I rewinded it a bit here. So I'm looking to go long on the micros, and that's where it is. That's why I have 1 or 2 contracts that I want to enter. Again, these are specific areas that I've spotted on my footprint charts that I watch on the left. Quickly, just wanting also gauging the volatility. I've noticed that it's approximately 7 to 8 point rotational market that we've got. So that's how far out you need to put your orders.
sell, sell,
This is going to be an
sell,
interesting trade because I think I hedged it here, and I get my entry was very aggressive there.
sell,
Uh, what I tend to do, and I've noticed that I've been doing that sometimes with the micros, is um,
sell,
if it doesn't come to my price, I just want to be long at least one to catch that initial move.
sell,
And
sell, sell,
sometimes I can make 20, $30 really
sell,
quick
Recenter.
with those
sell,
trades, but this one kind of
sell,
really comes
sell,
back, and the
sell, sell,
market
sell, sell,
is really
sell,
getting bearish here. So
sell,
it's it's not
sell, sell,
it's not ideal to
sell,
trade
sell,
this if it was a
sell,
regular NQ, but
sell, sell,
here
sell,
I couldn't. I
sell,
failed to get
sell,
to
sell,
get and look now. I failed to get out of the trade when it got to this area where I could have made $5 on it and scratch it basically. So I just noticed that the velocity. So if I rewind just a bit, the way the market's moving, it's really not in my favor here. So I'm
sell,
already thinking of moving
sell,
out either my buy orders a bit lower
sell,
so that
sell,
I don't have to tag into too many contracts all of a sudden. So I went and hedged with the regular NQ contract here. And look how the market really does when it go down. It really does when it move lower. So I got out of the NQ quickly because I noticed that you know the tape got really um, bearish at some point, but it just didn't give us the follow through. So I was like, look, the hedge is supposed to help, and it just got out of it quickly. So I was like a 5 minute, $5 or $10 scratch on the regular NQ, and here is where the micros just paid off and did a very good job of moving my entries, and then got one or two more out, and then it just did a sudden move lower. So I had my stops there. So uh, in the, the leftover contracts, I just took profits quickly. So if you're going to trade the micros, like I said, you need to be ready to, scale into maybe 5 or 10 easily so that you get that push up, and you need to let the market come to you if you're going to be trading the micros. And in some cases, I was being very aggressive, and I think sometimes you need to let the market come to you more often, especially days like OPEX, quarterly, the end of the quarter, end of the month. Kind of have to have that rotational mindset where the market will rotate a lot. Although it looks like it's a linear move up or some kind of a trend there, but it's a market that rotates a lot. So you need to let the market come to you in those cases, in those kind of days. All right, so again, I enter a bit aggressively on this one on the micros here. This trade, I just scratch it very quickly. As you can see, didn't really get the conviction that that movement was going to come. So just look at how the market moves here. Okay, look at the movement it's doing. This is typical of a market that wants to go lower. I don't even need to look at the tape. It's just super clear how it's moving here that it wants to go lower, you know? So when you see that, look here. Right here. You see? So again, that typical velocity move, and here I'm just long again, and I scratched this one, so it's not even worth looking at. Um, Again, that movement tells you that it's it wants. So that was just an example of how the velocity shifts, and you feel you feel it. You see how the market wants to go lower. You don't need to really look at the tape a lot, especially when you see that. Just either don't look to buy it. I mean, again, I'm talking mostly about the regular E-minis here, but that velocity shift is just typical of how the market wants to go lower. It's just the market's way of moving that's telling you that it most likely does want to go lower, you know?
James, Simon Property upgraded to buy at Jeffries on
So that's my news squawk on Jigsaw that's giving the news on typical, uh, you know, stocks and what's going on with the market, which stock is going up, or if there's any news related to any big cap stocks. Jigsaw gives you the news there. So let's look at the tape here for a couple of minutes. Very choppy market once again. Um, Nothing super bearish or super bullish. It's just super rotational. We've got some blocks coming in on NQ here, and as you can see, they are moving the prices lower, and this velocity is telling us that the market wants to go lower, but it's super jumpy. Like it's it wants to go lower, but it's always just moving higher and going lower, moving higher and going lower, kind of jumpy market. typical OPEX end of month, end of quarter type market, you know. We're gonna get to a trade here on ES where, again, looking at this velocity here, how it's trading one contract here, two, three, jumps one, two, you know, not huge size trading at all. So it's, it's still 12 o'clock here. It's noon time, and ideally, maybe not the best time to look for trades, but um, I mean, the last couple of days, the noon to 1 p.m. hasn't been that bad. So there were good occasions where you could have traded very well on noon time. So in the meantime, guys, don't forget to hit the subscribe and like button. And I'm tagging other videos that you can always go back and look into various trades and record recordings that I have, going back maybe a year ago as well. So let me just rewind this a bit because I think I missed it here. Going along, and I'm just testing to see if I could, you know, get a nice trade here, and then nothing really occurring. So I'm very ready to, if I can just get one nice movement out of this, I could get a $50 to $100 trade quickly here, but it doesn't do what I want, so I'm gonna scratch this. There you go. So this is where I think, if I'm not mistaken, I'm yeah, this is where I'm practicing basically one tick drills. This is little things that could help with scalping to learn how to scalp and all that. So 12 to 1 p.m. I noticed that it didn't really have huge momentum to it, so I'm practicing to read, uh, what I'm seeing on the tape and on the velocity here, and I've moved that to break even, giving it a bit too much movement here, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, I will be scratching this one pretty quickly. And no, I canceled that because I just felt like it would do that movement, and there you go. That's what I want to see. Look at NQ moving lower, beautiful velocity. This wants to go lower, no doubt. It wants to go lower. So I can maybe get, a couple of ticks out of this trade, and then boom. As soon as I get a quick move there, I just scratch it at 12 bucks. So again, it's little practices that I do sometimes just to, focus on tape, and, you know, always trying to improve on entries and all that. So this is the kind of things that really help with entries. More and more you practice those 1 to 2 tick drills. It's not about making 1 or 2 ticks. Guys, don't think that a scalper is always looking to make 1, 2, or 3 ticks, and then, again, another opportunity you'll make another 1 or 2 ticks. That's not how scalping works. It's really entry is all about, scalping is all about entry. If you can maximize and improve your entries, you will always have a trade that will either be a scratch or a winner, because your win rate is something where, I don't really believe in win rates, but it's not about taking 10 trades and making 8 good trades out of it. It's about taking 10 trades, scratching maybe 2 or 3, and making 4 or 5 that make a nice run, and you'll have 1 or 2 losers in there, but the losers will always be 12 bucks or 25 bucks, 1 or 2 tick losses. Ideally, that's what scalping is all about. It's all about the entry. Okay. So before I get to the next trade, I just want to make sure we could take some time looking at the tape here. Okay, so sorry, I did not do the right rewinding here. So, okay, anyway, let's just see if I can get back to it. Yeah, maybe a couple of minutes here. Okay, so that was the long trade I scratched before, It's fine. Nothing huge there. Trying to get to the short trade here. Sorry, I got a bit mixed up with the trades here. It is the afternoon of the 16th. So I see the Nasdaq doing its movement here. It did push up, gave us a 585 delta here. Very strong move up, but ES hasn't. So I'm hesitant. I'm looking to go short here, and you know, I was a bit aggressive on the entry. I should have maybe let the market move back into a level that I wanted to short. So I'm very close to a high volume node. So I noticed that this is gonna give me a very you know hesitant trade where I should just either look to scratch it right away, but you'll see how Nasdaq starts moving lower here. That was the tipping point signal for me to say, okay, keep the trade here, keep the bearish view here, and then I go ahead and not, if I'm not mistaken, I add to the short here, noticing some absorption here, and I kind of think that uh, a lot of participation at this level means we could most likely flush down a bit here from this level. The fact that it is a high volume node, um, a lot of traders getting that wrong because VPOC is not support or is not resistance. It's an area to focus when you move to it as a target. And here at this level here, what I'm seeing is that the market just is stuck and is getting absorbed a lot here. That was one thing that I should have just, look, bail out, scratch this because this could move up or move down very quickly. And I gave it some time. I was very patient with it. And the time of the day is also 12 o'clock. So around this time, um, making 1-2 tick trades is pretty easy to do. So as you can see, I'm short two here, and I'm trying to add to it, going to short a third contract. The fact that the market has been rotating around maybe 2-3 ticks and all that, I'm still convinced I can get maybe a nice little trade out of this. And NQ is very rotational, Russell as well. Um, the tape is not aggressively fast, so good context to get this kind of trade going. Gonna see if I can maybe fast forward just a bit because, again, did not really do much, really rotated around 3-4 ticks here. Very patient on this one. And then here is where it moved down, and I show you the context of the market here. Very rotational market, again, very balanced as well. And this is where I kind of bailed out with 75 bucks on this trade. And, again, I'm short three here, blocks coming in, and, you know, being very patient with this trade is something I I generally don't do, and I'm generally a bit more quick to scratch them. I could have really quickly scratched this trade right here. This was the tipping point. Could have got out here, but let it run a bit, and it did go against me just a bit. And then at the end of the day, what I did is I scaled into another couple of contracts, and I'm ready to bail out because Nasdaq is getting really fast. And then look how Nasdaq all of a sudden starts doing this. Look at that. Here we are. This movement is good. This is good movement. This here, it's not super bullish, but look at the velocity here. I was always monitoring Nasdaq to see if I can get something, and the fact that we're getting blocks and the ES is not even ticking 2-3 ticks. It's like going up 1 tick and coming back down. At the end of the day, this trade did work out. So I kept moving the 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 profit taking orders here, and then I just moved them back in, and then look how I let it run a bit, and then it did do the movement I wanted. So I kept moving them down again because I scaled in and then I scaled out a bit, and then just showing you the context again. Here we are. Now look at this. It starts doing the move that I want. Nasdaq has moved lower. Overall, it is not super bullish, so it's still a good trade. I've got one left, one contract left. I was actually targeting that level, the 64. I really actually want to go long on this market if it gets to 64s, but it's just not doing what I want. So, as they say, trade the market that you have, not what you think. So I finally scratched this trade out. I mean, again, I got really patient with it. I I had multiple occasions to just scratch it and get out. Uh, Call me stubborn, or maybe the time of the day was not ideal. Maybe I should have just, um, taken the profits a lot earlier. But it was also the fact that, Nasdaq was kind of moving lower several times, and ES just didn't follow. So, I mean, typically I should have bailed out of this trade a lot faster. Again, nothing's perfect. We're not perfect. We're human. Sometimes I get into bad trades too. So the best thing is to not let it run too fast against you. And again, all that is pretty subjective, because some some traders, having a trade go against them 8, 10 ticks, 12 ticks for them is very normal. I generally don't like to go. Um, I don't like to let the market go against me 4 to 6, maximum 8 ticks on ES. And that's kind of like the tipping point where I know that I'm really on the wrong side of the tape. So later on in the day, I scaled into many micros on the Nasdaq, as it had made a nice push lower, and it did actually end the day much higher. So uh, I had a nice trade on the micros here where I scaled in to a very good number of contracts, and I was willing to add to more into to these levels, but it did do a nice push up and tagged me, and uh, I made a nice profit out of this trade. I scaled in and out many times, so that's why you were seeing the negatives here. But I had a nice maybe $300. I was up like $500 on this trade, and didn't really close it because I was looking for the overnight highs to be taken out, and it did not. So I mean, it was a fairly good trade where I just moved really fast into my targets and closed it pretty well. Um, Micros again, I traded that because very jumpy market, but in the afternoon, it got a lot easier, where it was pretty clear that the market was just taking the stops out, getting absorbed at the lows, and then moving higher. So once again, don't hesitate to contact me. Do hit the subscribe and like buttons. I really do appreciate your feedback. And again, um, I believe, as a scalper, the most important thing is to really make sure that we're getting our entries optimal, uh, making them, you know, really reading the volatility of the market. How many ticks to the upside, how many ticks to the downside are we moving in ES? And then in NQ, I don't really look at it as ticks. I look at it as points. So if the market's trading at 27s, um, when it moves lower, how many points lower did it go? And then here I reversed. I saw that the market gave us a little bit of a shift where it did look like what's gonna wanted to go lower. So as you can see, just to cover also, what I did here is I just wanted to push lower, and I really do like to trade the micros, where I like to initial position makes me 20, $30. That's like on the micros, don't expect to make $100 on your initial contract right away. To make $100, you need to, you really need to get like a 20-point mover on Nasdaq, and you're not gonna typically get those kind of movements unless it's a huge news event or something that's crazy where it flushes through a certain level, and you're not going to get those kind of trades very often. So you need to look for trades that occur more often. And my goal with the micros is to scale in. Maybe the first five contracts is where I really make sure my entries are at good levels, where I'm not being too aggressive on them. I might be aggressive on the first contract because, I mean, you know, having a couple of points against you with the micros, it's not the end of the world. But then my next 4 to 5 contracts are the ones that I typically really want to manage my entries pretty well. And that's where, if the market's really moving against me and I'm really on the wrong side of it, I don't typically go and scratch the micros trade, but I'll hedge it with a Nasdaq. So I like to only hedge it once I get to maybe 5 micros. Uh, then that's where I'm pretty convinced that I'm on the wrong side of this here, and it's most likely going to go against me at least 10, 15 points, and that's where I'll try to hedge it with a with a E-mini Nasdaq contract. So hopefully this helps, guys. Please do hit the subscribe button and all that, and make sure to don't hesitate to contact me, and do make sure to give me some feedback. Enjoy your day.